What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the fourth episode of the Flask tutorial series here on Neural 9. In this video today, we're going to learn how to work with forms, post requests, and JSON data. So let us get right into it. Alright, so we're going to cover a lot of different things in this video today. Primarily, we're going to focus on handling post requests in the backend in a more advanced way than we already did in episode 2. We're going to learn about forms. We're going to learn how to handle forms data. We're going to learn how to send post requests using JavaScript with JSON data. We're going to learn how to handle that JSON data. We're going to learn how to upload files, how to process uploaded files, how to respond with a file download for the user, and stuff like that. And what we have here now for the beginning is a very basic Flask application, which just renders an index.html file. This index.html file just has a heading hello world, and it extends a base HTML template. Nothing too fancy here. Very simple. We already know how all of this works. I can run this so that you can see what this looks like again. Just a basic hello world page. And what we want to do now is we want to handle a post request, but we don't want to do it the way we did it in episode 2 with curl, with a command line tool. We actually want to have an HTML form where I can input some data, where I can press a button, and then the post request is sent and something is done based on that post request. So what we're going to do here is a very simple example, is a dummy login page. So we're just going to have username, password, and then we're going to send a post request with username, password, and if they match some static string, then we're going to say success, otherwise we're going to say fail. So this is of course not an authentication system. It's just a dummy page that, processes username and password and compares them to strings, but it's a good start to understand what is happening here, or how this works. So we're going to use index for that, and what we need to do first is we need to specify that multiple methods are allowed here. By default, remember, get is already allowed, but we still need to specify it here if we want to change this. And we now also want to allow for post requests here. So the idea is with a get request, we want to get the HTML page to display the form, and then when we submit that form, we want to send a post request, and then we want to process the data that was sent. So what we're going to do here is, first of all, import request, and we're going to distinguish between two cases. If request.method is equal to get, then what we want to do is we want to just render the index.html file. Otherwise, if request method is equal to post, we want to do something else that we don't have yet, so I'm just going to return an empty string for now. We're going to implement that once we have the form. So what we want to do now is we want to get into index.html and we want to create a simple form. So I'm just going to say here form, and now we need to specify a couple of things. We want to say method is equal to post. This is a post request that we're sending, and the action is the target URL that we're sending this to. Here, for this, we're going to use again double curly brackets, URL for, and the endpoint that we're sending the post request to, in our case, index. Now, of course, what you can also do if you want to, you can also create a separate endpoint login that only accepts post requests, and then index only accepts get requests. And then, of course, you can also send the action to another page. You don't have to send it to the same page. You can also send it to a different endpoint. But we're going to do it like this now. And in this form, we're going to have two basic fields, input type text. Now, the important thing here is the name. We don't need an ID. This is more for CSS stuff, for styling. We don't need a class. We need a name. The name is important because the name is what we're going to get as a key for the key value pair in the backend. So we're going to say that the name is username here. And then we're going to define a placeholder, username. And then we're going to copy this, type password, name is going to be password, and placeholder is going to also be password. Like this. And then finally, we want to have an input type submit with the value login. And probably we should add some line breaks here. So when I run this here, you can see we have this basic form. I can enter some stuff, and I think if I just do something, I'm going to get an empty response here, because remember, if we send a post request, which we now did, we just get an empty string as a result here. So what we would actually want to do is we would want to compare the username and password to our quote unquote actual username and password. So what we do here is we say username equals, and now we have to get the username from the post request that was being sent. So we're going to say request.form. Now this is important. If you get the request from a form, the post request comes from a form, we get request.form dot and then get key, or you use it as a dictionary. However, if you send a request with JavaScript and you send a JSON object, you have to use request JSON. We're going to look at this here in a second. Request form, and now I can access the key username like this, or I can also say form.get username. Whatever you like, it's the same thing. It's just a different way of writing it. And then password, request, form, get, password. So now we get these things from the post request. And of course, if you have some optional stuff, it makes sense to first of all check if it's part of the form. So you can say if, and then before getting it, because in this case you would get an exception if you have something that's not part of the form that was submitted and you try to access it, you're going to get an exception. It's going to crash your application. What you should do is something like if username in request form keys, only then get username. But in this case, there's no way to not get the username because we're going to use the application properly. So for now, we're going to ignore this. But this is how you get the two things now from the form. And now we can say if username is equal to, let's say, neural9, and password is equal to, let's say, password, then return. Now we're just going to return a text success. Otherwise, we're going to return failure, like this. So I can go here again. I can type some nonsense. There you go, failure. And now I can go and I can say neural9, password, success. So this is how you handle very basic form data. Now, what we can also do is we can upload files. This now gets a little bit more advanced because you need to consider a couple of things. When you upload files, you have to provide specific types of inputs. You also have to change stuff about the form itself, and you have to also access the files in a different way. So this right here is a very simple way. You just have some input stuff. You have some text, password, number, whatever, and you just name them and you just access them. This is how you handle basic form data. You can now add a bunch of other fields here with type number and stuff like this. Doesn't really matter. It's the same way of handling it. You just get the form dictionary and then you get the individual keys. And again, if something is optional, you just say if whatever key you have, some key in request form keys, then get it from there to keep it safe. Now we're going to handle files, and for this I want to actually create a new endpoint. I want to create an endpoint file upload. So we're going to say app route / file upload, and here now we want to handle what happens when a file is being uploaded. For now, I'm just going to return an empty string because first of all, again, I want to handle this in the HTML file. So we're going to create another form here. Let's maybe add a heading in between to know the different sections. We're going to add a new form here, and we're going to start the same way. Method is equal to post. Action is going to be equal to now, of course, a different URL. So URL for the method or for the function file upload. And the important thing now is that we need to specify an encoding type. We need to say that this is now, we need to add this parameter here. Enctype is equal to multi-part form data, because we're going to pass files now, so it's a different type of encoding that we have to use here. Multi-part form data. This is important. Then what we can do is we can say input, and the type of the input is file. However, this is not all of it because file is very generic. What kind of file are you expecting? Are you expecting any type? Are you expecting any kind of file? Or are you expecting maybe just plain text, or just Excel files, or just CSV files, or something like this? Depending on that, you're going to have to specify a different keyword here, or a different parameter here in a second. So we're going to say the name is just file, nothing too fancy. And what we want to do now is we want to say accept equals, and accept equals, now you can specify certain content types. Now, what these content types, content types are exactly. You have to Google most of the time. Here in PyCharm, I have all the suggestions, which is very convenient. But if you have a certain file type that you want to allow for here, you need to Google what the content type string is actually. What I want to allow here now is I want to allow Excel files, so basic Excel files, XLS and XLSX, and also plain text. So how do I do that? I have to know what the proper content type is for Excel, and I think it is application VND, and then we need open XML formats. So you have to scroll for a while here. Oh, actually, I don't think that we have it here. So I have to type it out, application/VND dot open XML formats dash office document dot spreadsheet. Usually you want to copy that. You don't want to type this out. Actually, I'm going to copy this now because there's no value in doing this here. So let me just mark this and then copy this to my clipboard. Then I'm gonna just paste this here. So the idea is you get the content types. In this case, I have 3 content types. This is 1. Then I use a comma to separate them. Then I use another one, and then I use a comma again, another one. So here I have Excel again, and then text plain, so txt files. So that's basically it. Then I can also set this to required equals required, even though I think required in and of itself should be enough. Let's do it like that. And then I can use again input type submit, or submit, and then the value of that is upload file. So let's go ahead. I can browse the file. I can use data XLSX. I can upload the file, and in this case it tells me method not allowed because in my file upload here I didn't specify that the method that I want to allow here is equal to post. Let's go again, upload the file, and I get nothing in return because of course we had return an empty string. So now it's about handling that file. Let's say what we want to do here in this case is we just want to in the case of a text file, we want to return the content of the file. So we just want to display the content of the text file. In the case of an Excel file, we want to render the table. We want to load it into a data frame, and we want to render the table to the HTML file. So we want to show an HTML table of the data frame. For this, of course, we need pandas. So if you don't have pandas installed, this is now just an example, by the way. If you don't care about pandas, you don't want to process Excel files, just skip this. You don't need to work with that. That's not part of the course. But we're going to do this here now as an example. In this case, you would have to install pandas like this. Pip or pip3 install pandas. And of course, we need to also then import pandas as PD. And now what we would do here is we would first of all get the file. So we would say that the file is equal to request.files. This is now a separate field. It's not form, it's not JSON, it's files, specifically for files. And here we want to get file. This is again the name here, file. What we now want to do is we want to look at the content type of the file and decide what we do with that file. So we're going to say if file.content type is equal to text/plain. If that is the case, all I want to do is I want to return file read the content of the file, decode it so that it's a string because it's binary data, I think, by default, since we have the encoding type. And that happens when we have a text file. Otherwise, if the file content type, file content type is equal to the Excel stuff, and I think for this I'm gonna just do it like this, or file.content type is equal to that. So just the 2 different content type strings. If it's one of those, then what we want to do is we want to say data frame is equal to pandas read Excel and then the file like this. And then what we want to return is just df2 HTML. which is a method in pandas that allows us to turn the data frame into HTML so that we can easily just display it. All right, so that is it, and we can actually see now, hopefully, that this works. So I have data XLSX, I can upload it, and you can see I get the content of the Excel file. This is the content of the Excel file as HTML here, rendered. Now, I can also go here now and I can create a text file. Let's call this hello.txt, and I can say hello world. This is a text file with some text. And then I can go here, I can browse, I can get hello.txt, upload file, and there you go. Now the line breaks are not displayed properly, but that's okay. And you can see we can distinguish between content type and get different responses. So this is how you handle file uploads. You get a file from request files. This is just whatever file you submit here is input type file. You accept certain file formats, you can check for them, and you can process them in different ways, depending on what the content type is. So that's actually quite straightforward and simple. Let us now actually go and implement a use case that might be interesting. Let's go ahead and convert an Excel file to a CSV file. So we take an Excel file and we take the content that we displayed as a table here in HTML, and we want to return, so this is now also about a file download. As a result of the request, we don't just want to display something, we actually want to return a CSV file to the user that the user can download. So how can we do that? For this, what we're going to do is we're going to create an endpoint app route. We're going to call this convert CSV. By the way, the reason you already always see the names that we're going to use is because I have all the code prepared, so it already knows what I want to call the functions, or the routes at least. So convert CSV is going to be the endpoint. And here now, all we want to do is we want to take the file and we want to return the converted version, so the CSV file. And for this now, again, we're going to just copy this part. We're going to paste it down below. We're going to change this to convert to CSV. And now we're not going to allow for text plain. We're only going to allow for Excel. So we have, and also we're going to not send this to file upload. We're going to send this to convert CSV. And it's important, of course, to specify here again, methods is equal to post. We accept post requests on this endpoint. And the idea is the same now. We get the file, we say file equals request files file. And in this case, it's always going to be an Excel file. We don't even need to check for this. It's always going to be an Excel file because those are the two things that we accept. By the way, let me just, I hope this can be run right now. You can see which types are supported down here. You can see now, since I, in the first form, allowed for Excel, and text file, these are the supported types. And only these are actually displayed here. Whereas here now, I only have Excel and Excel. All right, so we know that this is going to be the file type. What I can do now is I can load this into a data frame again, pd.readExcel file, and then I can craft a response that I can give to the user, and in this response, I'm actually returning a file. How do I do that? I import from Flask response with a capital R, and then I do the following thing. Response is equal to response, and here I specify a couple of things. First of all, what am I responding with? And what I'm responding with is a CSV file, so df2CSV. I'm taking the data frame and turning it into a CSV file, and since I'm not specifying a path here, I'm getting the object itself as a result. So df2CSV, then I specify the MIME type, which is the content type, and the string for CSV is just text/CSV. And then what I do is I say headers equals, and here I pass now a dictionary with a key content disposition. And we pass the value attachment and file name equals, and now you can choose the file name of the CSV file. Now this is important, this is optional, but this is important because the file itself doesn't have, or actually I'm not sure if this is in this case even optional, maybe it's even mandatory, but the thing that you're returning you need to also specify a file name for it. And what you can do with this header field is you can specify what the download name is going to be, because there's also another use case, which we're going to look at in a second, where you actually have the file stored on your system and the file might have a completely random file name, but you want to return it as result.csv, for example. So this is why you need this header. And now what we do is we just return the response itself. So again, we get the file, we load it into pandas, we turn it into a CSV file, we specify the type, we specify the header with a file name, and that is it. So now this should already work. I load the Excel file, upload file, and now you can see that for this I'm gonna now navigate to my directory here, result.csv. I don't want to do that, come on. Current, save, result.csv. And now I have a CSV file with the information from the Excel file. So this is one way to serve a file. This is one way to return a file for download. We can find a second way now, or we can do a second way now, which is you get the file, you download the file from the user. So the user uploads the file and you process the file. And what you do is the result, you don't return it immediately. You save it in a downloads directory, and then what you do is you return to the user a download page with a separate button. So the user uploads an Excel file, clicks on convert, and instead of just getting the file as a result, he's redirected to a download page, and at this download page, the file is then loaded from the system, from the server, and downloaded. This is, in my opinion, more professional most of the time. You don't want to just return the file immediately. You want to have a download page. And then you can download the file from there. But of course, it depends on the use case. So we're going to call this convert CSV2. And the function is going to also be called convert CSV2. And of course, this takes methods equals post. And what we want to do now here is, let's copy this, convert to CSV2, convert CSV2. We're going to have to add a couple of things here because we need a download template in our application. We need to have here a download HTML file, which actually I'm going to just copy index. I'm going to call it download HTML. And for now, we're just going to have downloads as a heading here. And actually nothing else. I'm going to add the stuff later on. And in our convert to function, now we're going to do the same thing. File equals request.files file. Then we're going to load this into a data frame. So pd read Excel file. And now what we're going to do is we're going to see, does the download directory that I want to store this in, the CSV file in, does it already exist? If not, we're going to create it. And then we're going to place the CSV file there so that it can be downloaded later on. For this, we're going to need the OS module or package. So import OS. And we're going to say if os.path.exists, or actually if not os path exists, downloads, we're going to do os make dears downloads. And then we're going to create a file name. We're going to say file name is equal to, and the important thing now is we want to have some file name that's completely random. It doesn't really matter, but we want to make sure that we don't use the same file name that's maybe already there. And for this, we're going to import another Python library, UUID, which is basically generating a random ID, which is almost certain to not be the same as one that you generated already. So it's very unlikely that you're going to generate something that you already have. So we're going to say file name is equal to UUID, UUID4, and then .csv. So just some generated file name. And now what we're going to do is we're going to save the file with this file name, and then we're going to return download HTML, and we're going to pass the file name as a parameter to the HTML file so that the HTML file, when you press download, knows which file to actually download. So we're going to say df to CSV, and then os path join, downloads, and file name. And then we return render template download HTML, and the file name is equal to file name. Now, the important thing about download is now it has to actually download from an endpoint. So it actually needs to call an endpoint that makes the download, that performs the download. So we're going to create this one, app.route download /download actually. And then we're going to just call this download. And here what we're going to do is we're going to return, and this is now a function that we need to import again from Flask. It's called send from directory. So we send from directory, and this is now the directory downloads, the file name, which we need to pass here, or we want to pass here as a URL parameter. So I'm going to just call this file name. I'm going to pass this here as file name. This is now again these URL processors. We pass the file name here, and then the download underscore name is what we want the file actually to be called. So again, we have some random file name, some numbers and letters mixed together, .csv, but the download name should be result.csv. All right, and then finally, what we need to do is we need to go to download. We need to create an anchor tag with the following URL, url4 download, and the file name is equal to file name. And then download file. So if I'm not mistaken, this should actually be it. I need to run the application. There you go. Now this is not the best styling, I know. Let's go ahead, upload data XLSX, upload file. Now I'm redirected to download. We can see here behind the scenes a downloads directory was created with some random file name. You can see here the UUID. It's the CSV file. And now what I can do is I can download the file and I get result.csv. I can save it, replace the existing file, and I now have the same file here. And if I do this again, I'm going to get a different file. So I can do this again, upload file. And now you can see I have a second file here, and I'm going to download it, and it's going to be result.csv again. And of course, you should probably on a regular basis clean the downloads directory. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of different files that you don't need anymore. Maybe once a day you should clean it. But yeah, this is how you can do that. Then finally, I also want to cover how to post JSON data with JavaScript. So this is now no longer Python and HTML. Now we're going to actually use JavaScript to send a post request with a button click. Now, why is this useful? It's useful because sometimes you're going to have some button or some chat or something that you want to use to send requests to the backend. So a very simple example of that is you have a chatbot, you have a chat window, and you have an AI model in the background answering the request. You have an endpoint that you need to communicate with, but you don't want to actually send form data. So to chat with a chatbot, you don't want to send, you don't want to fill out a form with your message, send the request, and then be redirected to another page to get the response. You want to do this dynamically in the same window. You want to just send a request using JavaScript, get the response, update the HTML, and so on. This is why you want to do that. So for this, let me just close all of this. Let's go to index again. We're going to do down below h1 JavaScript JSON request. And all we're going to do here now is we're going to have a button, and the button will have an ID. This is now important. The ID is important because now we're working with JavaScript. JavaScript works with ID. An ID is a unique identifier for a specific element in HTML. And we're going to call this post button, and I'm going to say send post request. And what we need now is we need an endpoint that we're going to send a request to. This is going to be the endpoint that handles the JSON data. And for that, we're going to go to app.py. We're going to create an endpoint app route. Let's call this handle post, which of course needs to take method post. Handle post. And what we do in this one here is we get the JSON data. We expect this post request to be a JSON, to have the content type JSON. So we say here, what we're going to do is we're going to have a greeting and a name, and we're going to process a greeting and name by writing it into a file and then returning that the file was successfully written. So we're going to say greeting is equal to request.json, and then greeting. I can copy this, name equals request JSON name, and then I want to say with open file.txt in writing mode sf fwrite, and then just greeting name. And then we want to return just a JSON object saying that it was successfully written. So key message and value successfully written. So I can just do it like this, message, and then successfully written. Now, the best practice way to do this is to JSONify this to make sure it's actually a JSON object. So you want to import JSONify from Flask, and you just want to call the function on this. So JSONify on this dictionary, and that's it. So this is our endpoint, and now we're going to send a post request to that endpoint using JavaScript. So script, we're going to create a script tag down here. Script type is text JavaScript, and the functionality is going to be the following. We're going to get the button as a constant here, so const post button is going to be equal to document.getElementById. Now this is core JavaScript. You probably want to use something like jQuery if you're actually doing some JavaScript stuff, but this is now core JavaScript. GetElementById post underscore button, then const JSON data is gonna be equal to, and now let's just go with name, or actually we don't need quotation marks here. Name is gonna be equal to Mike, and the greeting is gonna be equal to hello. And of course, in the case of a chatbot, you would not just statically define the JSON data, you would actually get it. You would get the content of a text box that contains the data. You would get the content from the chat window. You would update the content of the chat window, but we're keeping it simple now. We have some static JSON dictionary here, some static JSON data. And now we're going to add an event to the post button. We're going to say post button dot add event listener. And the event listener that we're targeting is click. So when you click on the button, the following is going to happen. We're going to have an anonymous function here. Just parentheses, then equals, and then the greater than sign, so an arrow basically, then curly brackets, and in here now we're going to call the fetch function, and the URL is, again, we can get it dynamically, URL4, and the URL4 is going to be handle post. So that is where the request is going. Then again, curly brackets, to say the method that we're using here is post. And we need to specify the headers because, of course, what we're sending is JSON data, but we need to also specify its JSON data. So we're going to say content type is application/JSON. Then semicolon character set is equal to UTF-8. So the encoding. Basically, and the body, this is now the content, the body is equal to JSON.stringify JSON data. This is basically sending the request. What we want to do now also is we need to respond, or we need we can respond. So we can say here dot then, what happens then? Response is response.json. And then then we can say data console log. And we can log that this was successful. Success is success data here. So success data. And then finally we can say catch. If there's an error, we can also come on. I'm not used to JavaScript. I don't like JavaScript, so I have to constantly check my second screen. Console.error and we can just log the error message. Yeah, that's basically it. And I think this needs to be closed. And this also needs to be... No, actually, is this... Where is this closed? This is actually closed here. I think I messed up something in my code. Yeah, of course, because we need it like this. All right, so to just go over this again, we define the element post button to be the element in the document that has the ID post button, which is our button here. We have some static JSON data. In an actual application, you would read this from the text boxes. Then you add an event listener to the button. When the button has the event click, then the following thing happens. We fetch to the URL of the handle post endpoint with a post request. We have the content type JSON. We get the JSON data, we stringify it, that's the body. Then we get the response, we get the data, we log the data if it was successful. If there's an error, we log the error message. That is what we do here. So let's go ahead and go to the site. Let's go ahead and open up the console. Let's send the post request. There you go, successfully written. Then I can see I have file.txt, hello Mike. So this is how you can handle JSON data from JavaScript post requests. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video and bye.